He couldn't even name the brand name, let alone the model number of what he was playing, which just told me that he really wasn't that concerned about it.
Little Walter was a legend in the blues world, known for his brilliant harmonica playing and impressive performances. However, behind the scenes, it was a different story. Little Walter was haunted by personal hardship and tragedy. What terrible things did he face? Let's explore the events that led to his untimely death. Little Walter, whose real name is Marion Walter Jacobs, was born on May 1, 1930 in Marksville, Louisiana. He was the seventh of 9 children and faced financial hardships from a young age. Walter's family lived in poverty, which affected his childhood and development. When Walter was 7 years old, the family moved to Chicago, Illinois, where he began to learn and be exposed to music. Life in Chicago offered him many opportunities, but also challenges. Despite living in a poor neighborhood with many gangs and crimes, Walter found his passion for music amidst those hardships. He was attracted to local blues artists and regularly attended live music performances at clubs. Little Walter began playing the harmonica at a very young age and soon became a recognized artist. With no formal training, Walter relied on his keen ear and natural musical ability. He spent countless hours listening to John Lee's Sonny Boy Williamson recordings, meticulously imitating the blues harmonica pioneer's sound and technique. He joined many local bands, where he developed his unique skills and playing style. His combination of harmonica technique and dynamic performance style made him stand out in the Chicago blues community. Walter's passion for music and relentless spirit led him to make a bold decision at the age of 12. He left his hometown, taking on the world with nothing but a harmonica and a dream. His first stop was New Orleans, where he began honing his skills in the city's vibrant bar scene. Walter's passion for music and his restless spirit led him to make a bold decision at the age of 12, to leave home to pursue his musical dreams. The first step in his journey was New Orleans, where he began practicing and demonstrating his harmonica skills in lively bars. Here, Walter not only learned how to captivate audiences, but also felt the strong influence of blues music. However, New Orleans was simply the beginning of Walter's lengthy trek to his destination. As part of the Great Migration, he relocated to Chicago, which is up north. Along the trip, Walter made stops in locations such as Helena, Arkansas, and Memphis, where he continued to study and absorb new musical genres. He also continued to learn new lyrics. During his time in Memphis, he was exposed to the city's extensive musical history, while in Helena, he immersed himself in the local blues culture. The encounter that took place between Little Walter and Sonny Boy Williamson was a defining milestone in Walter's personal and professional life. The harmonica player known as Sonny Boy Williamson, whose real name was Alec Ford, is widely regarded as one of the most talented musicians in the history of blues music. Williamson was a significant motivating factor for a great number of artists, including Walter. Not only did Walter have the chance to listen to Williamson in St. Louis, but he also had the chance to learn from himself, as Williamson was his idol. Williamson was well known not just for his ability to play the harmonica, but also for his distinctive style of presentation and composition. As a result of how Williamson conveyed passion in each note, Walter was able to appreciate the allure of blues music, which in turn motivated him to establish his unique style. Walter gained vital insights regarding composition and performance as a result of this interaction, which assisted him in developing the unique sound that would later become a defining characteristic of his career. Additionally, Walter was able to interact with other blues artists in the neighborhood, which not only helped him develop his skills, but also boosted his self-assurance. Walter started to look up to Sonny Boy Williamson as a role model, and his influence can be heard in the music that Walter produced in the years thereafter. In point of fact, Walter has stated that Williamson was the one who taught him how to feel music and how to make distinctive sounds from the harmonica. These are both skills that Walter has utilized and improved throughout his career. At the end of 1947, Little Walter decided to relocate his official residence to Chicago, which was widely regarded as the epicenter of blues music in the United States at the time. This was not only a pivotal moment in his career, but it was also the moment when Walter started to make a name for himself in the music industry. Walter was able to demonstrate his ability and connect with a large number of other artists, because of the lively blues clubs that are located in Chicago. He rapidly became a part of the music scene in this location, which was home to a large number of well-known musicians like Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. However, the road that Walter first took to arrive in Chicago was not an easy one. His competition was severe since there were a great number of other brilliant musicians. Walter was frequently required to generate one-of-a-kind sounds with his harmonica, using elements of a wide variety of musical styles to get the opportunity to perform regularly. His ability to play the harmonica immediately garnered notice, which assisted him in establishing himself as a prominent figure in the blues world. Regarding the question of age, Walter's birthday is sometimes a source of confusion. There is a lack of consistency in the data about his birth year, which raises issues about his actual age. Whereas some sources claim that he was born in 1930, others assert that he was born in 1934. It is possible that Walter's wish to look older was the cause of this disparity. If he were to appear older, it would be simpler for him to perform and sign a recording deal. Within the entertainment business, subtle manipulation of personal information is not commonplace. This is because the industry operates in an atmosphere where age may have a significant influence on a career. In Little Walter's works, the year 1930 has become the most frequently mentioned year of birth, and this year also served as the beginning of his eventful life experience. In a short amount of time after landing in Chicago, Walter established himself as a talented blues musician. But how did he showcase his talent? How did he attract an audience? Let's take a look at his clever strategy. Little Walter went out into the streets, drawing particular attention to the Maxwell Street Jewish market, which quickly became a favorite gathering place for blues performers. His humble yet passionate origins were demonstrated here by the fact that he performed for tips and fees. There was a vast variety of musical forms that Walter was able to perform, including waltzes, polkas, and a great deal of other types. His abilities were not restricted to the blues. The range and inventiveness he displayed with the harmonica were demonstrated here. Not only did Walter get money from these concerts, but they also provided him with the chance to garner attention from audiences, which assisted him in establishing a name within the blues world. Little Walter was a musician who was so enthusiastic about expanding his musical horizons that he was more than simply a harmonica player. He had a strong desire to learn how to play the guitar, and he was determined to become an expert in the instrument. He set his sights on the guitar. During the process of honing his guitar playing, Moody Jones, a guitarist who was born in Arkansas, acknowledged Walter's perseverance and tenacity. Walter followed Jones throughout his life, witnessing his performances and paying close attention to every skill that Jones displayed. This unwavering commitment and insatiable need for knowledge not only set Walter apart as a person, but also laid the groundwork for his eventual musical career. In the course of this period, Walter created his debut recording, which was a demo that was never published, and included him playing guitar accompaniment for Jones. Even though this tape was never made available to the public, it was a critical turning point in Walter's career as a recording artist. The capacity of Walter to blend the harmonica and guitar became an essential component of his music, which in turn influenced the evolution of his career in subsequent years. This revolutionary way of playing the harmonica by Little Walter had a significant impact on the blues scene. When Walter realized that the loud sound of the electric guitar frequently overpowered the sound of his harmonica, he devised a novel solution. He used a small microphone in conjunction with the harmonica and plugged it into an amplifier. This approach not only enabled him to raise the loudness to compete with the guitar, but it also made it possible for him to explore new possibilities for the timbre of the player's instrument. The volume was not the only thing that Walter accomplished. He did more than that. He began experimenting with new sound effects, which resulted in the creation of distinctive timbres that had never been heard from the harmonica or any other instrument before. In the realm of blues music, Walter's utilization of an amplifier to produce this characteristic sound became his hallmark, distinguishing him from other musicians. During the year 1947, he made his first formal recording appearance for Ornell, a modest record label that was housed in the Maxwell Street record shop owned by Bernard and Red Abrams. Walter recorded a blues boogie called I Just Keep Loving Her, which displayed his rising abilities. Otham Brown played the guitar and provided backing for the recording. Nell Blues was included on the reverse side of the record, and it had Walter performing behind Brown. This gave listeners a glimpse of the variety that Walter possesses. At the same time as Walter's concerts on Maxwell Street continued to garner attention, he started to socialize with blues musicians from the surrounding area. It wasn't long before he became acquainted with notable figures such as Tampa Red and Big Bill Brunsey. But it was his relationship with guitarist Jimmy Rogers that would prove to be a pivotal moment in his professional life. The introduction of Walter to Muddy Waters, which was a move that would change the direction of blues history, was made by Rogers, who was struck by Walter's exceptional skill. Walter joined Waters' road band in 1948, which already had Rogers on guitar, Big Crawford on bass, and Babyface Leroy on drums. Waters' road band also featured Big Crawford on bass. This collaboration marked the beginning of a musical relationship that would go on to produce some of the most important blues records in the history of the genre. Being a member of Waters' band, Walter brought about a significant change. The blues combo was transformed from a rural string band into what has been characterized as a wind and string orchestra as a result of his contribution, which brought about a new dimension to the formation. It was Walter's amplified harmonica that was responsible for producing eerie tones and lengthy drawn-out bends that resembled horns. He eventually became the principal soloist in the band. The new sound had an immediate and far-reaching influence on the surrounding environment. Louisiana blues was a smash all throughout the country, and it was recorded by Waters and Walter in 1951 as part of a trio that created the song. This achievement was only the beginning of things. In addition, Walter participated alongside Waters on the recordings of the Little Walter Trio and the Babyface Trio that were made at Parkway Studio. Babyface Leroy's version of Rolling and Tumbling, which included Walter's harmonica and Waters' slide guitar, was one of the most notable tunes that emerged during this period. This song has been acclaimed as one of the most powerful Chicago blues tunes that has ever been recorded by a number of various reviewers and historians. Within a short period, the trio of Waters, Rogers, and Walter established themselves as a powerful force in the Chicago blues atmosphere. They even got themselves the term headhunters, which reflected their self-assurance and their desire to compete with the ones around them. Later on, Waters said that they would search for other bands that were performing and would be prepared to destroy them if they were given the opportunity. "We are leaving the group." In the year 1952, Walter had recently achieved success with the stage theme song that the Waters band had performed for Chess Records to promote their album. At first, the tune was published under the moniker Juke. However, it was actually an unnamed boogie instrumental to begin with. An original work called Crazy About You Baby was featured on the B-side of the record. This composition was inspired by Sonny Boy Williamson's song Crazy About You Gal. Walter was completely unaware of the fact that this record would alter the trajectory of his professional life. While Walter was on tour in Louisiana with Waters' band, he learned information that would forever change the course of his life trajectory. Juke had risen to the top of the charts. As a result of this achievement, Walter was overcome with a sense of joy. When he was feeling very enthusiastic, he made the courageous choice to leave the band and head back to Chicago as soon as possible. After arriving back in Chicago, Walter was surprised to find out about an intriguing turn of events. Following Walter's departure from the Four Aces, Junior Wells, who played the harmonica for the band, joined Muddy Waters' band to fill the void left by Walter. Due to this unanticipated change of events, Walter was presented with an opportunity that was ideal for him. Without skipping a beat, he jumped at the opportunity to become a member of the Aces, a band that featured Dave Myers and Lewis on guitars, as well as Freddie Below on drums. Walter's abilities were able to be completely expressed thanks to the Aces, who provided him with the right musical framework. After some time had passed, Dave Myers would say that their quick and adaptable style of playing was the ideal complement to Walter's degree of musicianship. The members of the band were all in the process of broadening their musical expressions and exploring other forms of music, which had the effect of establishing an atmosphere that was conducive to continuous development and innovation. Within a short period of time, Walter was able to achieve a leadership position within the Aces, bringing with him a lively energy and an insatiable thirst for experimental musical ideas. Drummer Freddie Below, who was a member of the band, compared Walter's attitude to that of a school administrator. The continuous calls for rehearsals that Walter made were for the purpose of refining existing songs and experimenting with new ones. During each and every session, his unwavering commitment to enhancing their sound and expanding the bounds of their music was readily apparent. The recording process for this new lineup, which is now being labeled as Little Walter and his Jukes or Little Walter and his Nightcats, started at Chess Studios. The succession of singles that followed was nothing short of astounding, and they frequently outsold those that Muddy Waters Band had released after them. Throughout his career, Walter had successfully made the shift from being a supporting player to commanding his performing group. When it came to the rhythm and blues charts, Walter remained a formidable presence throughout the whole year of 1954. However, it was not until 1955 that he achieved his greatest success. My Babe was the title of the song, written by Willie Dixon and adapted from the gospel song This Train. It is interesting to note that Walter initially had a negative reaction to the song, but Dixon eventually became convinced that Walter would be the ideal musician to record it. Dixon's persistent determination paid off. After 2 years, Walter finally gave in and agreed to record My Babe, despite his initial hesitation to do so. Once the album was released to the public, it shot to the top of the charts, becoming Walter's most successful single and establishing him as a blues celebrity. During this time, Walter's music could be described as groundbreaking. Chicago blues historian Mike Rowe has commented that Walter had created a distinct style of blues. The sound of his amplified harmonica was so loud and his phrasing so unique that it often seemed as if he was playing a saxophone rather than a harmonica. His approach was more jazz-based, and his phrasing was very creative. With his unique approach to the blues, Walter set himself apart from his contemporaries and helped usher in a new era in the genre. There was more than one factor that contributed to the popularity of My Babe. A remarkable 14 of Walter's songs reached the top 10 of the R&B charts between 1952 and 1958. He made a large number of recordings for Chess Records and its subsidiary, Checker, in which he demonstrated his singing ability as well as his musical skills. However, his career was not all difficult. Walter's personal life was also full of tragedy. What did he go through? Was this the reason for his tragic death? Read on to find out. Around the time Walter reached the top of the charts with his most successful single, My Babe, in 1955, his career began to suffer serious setbacks. He began to experience a decline in the stability of his band, which had been an essential ingredient to his success. The Aces, who had provided the ideal musical backdrop for Walter's unique harmonica playing, began to leave one by one in search of other opportunities. Walter's harmonica playing was considered groundbreaking. Walter was forced to constantly search for new musicians to replace the vacancies left by the loss of key members of the band. Initially, Walter replaced the departing Aces with such accomplished musicians as guitarists Robert Jr., Lockwood, and Luther Tucker, as well as drummer Odie Payne. His supporting band eventually became a rotating cast of musicians, which included guitarists Jimmy Lee Robinson and Freddie Robinson, as well as drummer George Hunter. This occurred over the course of some time. It was during one of Walter's early tours that he experimented with integrating saxophone players into his traveling bands. Some of the more notable examples of this include the inclusion of young Albert Ayler and even Ray Charles. On the other hand, by the late 1950s, Walter had completely abandoned the practice of employing a regular full-time band. Rather than that, he resorted to using a wide range of blues musicians from Chicago's plentiful reservoir of talent whenever they were required. It is beyond a doubt that the absence of a reliable supporting band had an impact on the cohesiveness and quality of his live performances, which had previously been the foundation of his appeal. During this period, Walter's troubles started to have a substantial influence on his work life. During the initial stages of his career, excessive drinking was not a concern. Nonetheless, it eventually became a significant issue. Walter was known to drink nothing stronger than cola when he initially joined the Muddy Waters Band. He had a reputation for drinking this. His drinking habits, on the other hand, became more severe as the decade of the 1950s advanced, which resulted in unpredictable conduct and mood swings. The transformation that took place in Walter's personality had a significant impact on his capacity to conduct himself as the leader of the band. During this period, Walter's conduct was described as being similar to that of a cowboy by the historian Mike Rowe. His black Cadillac would frequently arrive at club gigs with a theatrical scream of brakes, attracting attention to himself in a manner that was more about spectacle than playing. He would do this to attract attention to himself. Additionally, Walter's temperament, which had always been keen, became much more acrimonious. A fellow harmonica player named Golden Big Wheeler made the observation that although Walter had the potential to be very charming, he also had the potential to be quite difficult to deal with if he developed a distaste for someone. The unpredictability of Walter's conduct made it difficult for him to establish strong connections with other artists and professionals in the business, which further complicated his career. Despite the fact that Walter was going through his own personal challenges, the music industry was going through bigger upheavals. It was during this time that younger African-American listeners were beginning to lose interest in blues music, while at the same time, white revivalists were beginning to become aware of it. During the latter half of the 1950s, Walter continued to produce high-quality content in the studio, despite the difficulties he was experiencing in his personal and professional life. Nevertheless, the detrimental effects of his way of life were becoming more and more apparent. In the 1960s, Walter was visual evidence of his turbulent personal life, as he had facial scars from drunken altercations. These scars were noticeable on his face. During a discussion that took place in the 1960s between Muddy Waters and Paul Oliver, Muddy Waters made a statement about Walter's strong personality and the challenges that he had encountered. He even said that Walter had a bullet lodged in his leg at the time during the chat. Despite this, Walter's image as a pioneer in the blues harmonica genre remained unharmed, and he continued to be able to book high-profile performances. In 1964 and 1967, he participated in the American Folk Blues Festival, which took him on 2 separate tours of Europe. There is just one known video footage of Walter playing, and it was captured during his tour in 1967. Following its initial broadcast on Danish television, this film, which features Walter providing support to Hound Dog Taylor and Coco Taylor, was subsequently made available on DVD in the year 2004. Additional video from a television appearance that Walter made in Germany during the same tour, in which he sang his singles My Babe and Mean Old World, was made available on DVD in Europe in the year 2009. These European tours, on the other hand, were a bright light in what was otherwise a time of decline for Walter. Throughout the 1960s, he made few recordings and went on few tours, limiting the majority of his performances to the Chicago area and its surrounding areas. During this period, Walter's professional difficulties were not entirely the result of his actions. As a result of the advent of rock and roll and other popular music styles, blues musicians like Walter were forced to exert more effort in order to keep their following. Even though some blues performers were able to adjust to these changes, Walter's problems made it impossible for him to successfully traverse this ever-changing musical milieu. In addition, the music industry of the 1960s was famously exploitative, particularly about African-American musicians. A great number of problems with equitable pay, copyright, and artistic control were present. When Walter, an artist who was already suffering from personal problems, was confronted with these obstacles in the profession, it added another layer of hardship to his work. This is the final year of decline. In the year 1954, Walter had completely accepted his image as a heavy drinker at that point. He went so far as to compose a song with the title Sloppy Drunk, which had lyrics that brazenly proclaimed, "I would rather be sloppy drunk than anything I know." It was more than simply bravado for him to have such an unabashed attitude concerning his use of alcohol. A mirror of the deeply rooted problems that were starting to devour him, it was a reflection of everything. The music industry is a very close-knit community, and Walter's drinking issues became infamous within that community. Due to his excessive use of alcohol, he had serious and even violent repercussions. It was in 1958, when he was drinking, that he was involved in a very serious event in which a lady shot him in the leg. Walter would be forced to walk with a limp for the rest of his life as a result of this injury, which would serve as a continual physical reminder of the toll that his lifestyle was having on him. He was surrounded by people who could see the toll that Walter's lifestyle and the changes in the profession had taken on him. It was Muddy Waters, his old bandmate, who made the startling revelation that little Walter had already passed away 10 years before his passing. There were still prospects for achievement that seemed on the horizon for Walter, despite the difficulties that he was facing. The fact that he had a reputation for being tough to collaborate with had, however, arrived at its conclusion. According to a significant number of his contemporaries in the Chicago blues scene, his fiery temper was a big reason why they did not want to perform with him. Even worse, there were many who went so far as to say that his voice was embarrassing and worn out. The studio was facing a huge challenge as a result of the weakening of Walter's microphone voice. During one of the recording sessions, there was even a tragic incident that was allegedly heard, in which someone was heard urging, "Don't sing, Walter, because if you do, we're ruined." The wistful response that Walter gave, "All right," conveys a great deal of information about his knowledge of his deteriorating talents and the impact that this was having on his sense of self-worth. In addition to booze, Walter was suffering from several other things. Those who were involved in the music scene were aware of the fact that he was also struggling with addictions to other narcotics. His personal and professional life became even more complicated as a result of this concoction of addictions, which made it increasingly challenging for him to continue performing at the same level of musicianship that had brought him fame. Walter still had some influential followers in the music industry, which is an interesting fact. At the height of their prominence, the Rolling Stones were devoted followers of Walter's work. Walter's work was important to them. On the other hand, even with their backing, he was unable to reverse the downward track of his professionalism. Regardless of the possibilities that presented themselves, it appeared that Walter was unable to get the break that he required in order to turn things around. An unfortunate turn of events would bring about the end of Walter's life not long after what ought to have been a defining moment in his professional life. It was in 1967 that he went on tour with the American Folk Blues Festival around Europe. Some of the people who saw him on this trip were under the impression that he had completely given up drinking, which provided a ray of hope for his future. On the other hand, this prospect of a reversal would turn out to be fleeting. A fight broke out between Walter and another individual when he was taking a break from a performance at a nightclub on the south side of Chicago. This occurred a few months after Walter had returned from his second tour of Europe. Reportedly, the injuries he got as a result of this incident were moderate. On the other hand, they made the harm that had already been done by past violent confrontations much worse, so generating a perfect storm of physical pain. A girlfriend's apartment at 209 East 54th Street in Chicago was the location where Walter's body was discovered the next morning. He had been found dead in his sleep. It was determined that coronary thrombosis, which is a blood clot in the heart, was the official cause of death that was mentioned on his death certificate. It is quite interesting to note that the exterior injuries that he had as a result of the battle were so little that the police first recorded his death as being the result of natural or unexplained causes. There was not even a single exterior injury that was mentioned on the death certificate. On February 22, 1968, Walter's remains were laid to rest at St. Mary's Cemetery in Evergreen Park, Illinois. The cemetery is located in the state of Illinois. It was a difficult life that had been distinguished by amazing highs and tragic lows, and the funeral represented the end of that existence. What do you think about little Walter's death? Was it natural? Was it due to his bad habits, or was it something else? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you and see you in the next video.